Ois Daled. The Rebbe is going to explain that there's actually two steps. We said before, Re'usa de Libo, the Ratzin Halev takes Atzmus, but then the Friedrich Rebbe adds in the Mamer that is through Tshuva Maisim Tovim. So, which is it? Is it the Re'usa de Libo that takes Atzmus, or it's the Tshuva Maisim Tovim? The Rebbe explains that the Tshuva Maisim Tovim, which comes as a result of Re'usa de Libo, that the Hisboinenus that brings to Tshuva Maisim Tovim is an Ava Atzmis. So the real Atzmus is Shoyre Davke in the Maisim Tovim, the Tshuva Maisim Tovim. The Re'usa de Libo is a Hachone that the Maisim Tovim should be a Keli, a Gili for Atzmus. Let's look inside. Dalit. But Yuvan Bahagdi will understand this by introducing the Mashekosuv Behamaimer Behemshech Le'inyan the Nitvas Iyu Berusa de Liba. This that the Maimer writes, continuing the idea of the Zohar, that the Eberster cannot be captured the Machshove, but it could be the Rotzin Halev. And as the Rebbe said, the Ava Atzmis. So the Maimer continues, Shal Yidei Tshuva Maisim Tovim Tevsim Ba'atzmus. That through Tshuva Maisim Tovim, we take hold of Atzmus. So first he talks about that Atzmus comes through the level of Rotzen Halev. And then Behemshech it says that through Teshuva Maisim Tovim you are grabbing hold of Atzmus. And the Rebbe explains that the Tshuva Umaisim Tovim that follow the Re'usa, the Liba of Atzmus, that's actually the way to get Atzmus itself. Rotzen Halev, even though is the Rotzen of the Etzem HaNefesh, it's Re'usa the Liba, but it's still a Rotzen of the person, as opposed to the mitzvah is Kabbalah Soil. And only there, as the Rebbe will explain. Based on what's explained in many places, that the performance of Torah mitzvahs that follows Ru'usa de Libo, who be madrega nailis yoser. It's on a greater level, kidlakamon. So you can do Torah mitzvahs, and you can do Torah mitzvahs after Ru'usa de Libo. And it's a higher level, what's explained elsewhere, when you do Torah mitzvahs, if it follows the Ru'usa de Libo. And this tells us why we need the Ru'usa de Libo in order to make the Torah mitzvahs on a higher level. So we can say the Mashekosu bezoyar shenitvas ihi berusa de Libo. But the Zohar says, the Zohar doesn't talk about the Tshuva Maisim Tovim. That's the Margela, that's what we brought in. The Zohar says that Leis Machshova Tfisa Bey, but you can take him through the Ru'usa de Libo. So the Rebbe explains now, when the Zohar says that you take the Eberster, Leis Machshova Tfisa Boch, Avol, in Ru'usa de Libo, yeah, there's two ideas. First is the Re'usa de Liba itself, that you connect to Atzmus, and even a higher level when this Re'usa de Liba develops later on into Tshuva Maisim Tovim. Shenitfas beru'usad liba atzmo. When the Zohar says that you take it rusad liba, it's the rusad liba itself. Then the other aspect is sharu'usad liba he hagdom likim atayna mitzvahs. That the rusad liba becomes is an introduction to the performance, the observance of Torah mitzvahs. Shobahem nitzvahs atzmus mamish. In Torah mitzvahs, you actually get atzmus when it comes following Ru'usa de Liba. That's when you get atzmus in the tshuva and ma'asim Torah. V'hainu. Shebichdei litfeis ba'atzmus mamish. In order to actually take hold of the atzmus, actually, ubeikir al yidei kim haTorah mitzvahs. That's mainly through doing Torah mitzvahs. But if you just did Torah mitzvahs without the rules of the lipa, you wouldn't be able to take atzmus. Elo shezeh shel yidei ma'isa mitzvahs toifsim b'ha atzmus hu. This, that when we do the act of mitzvahs, we are able to grab hold of atzmus ukeshehasiya hi bebitl. The prerequisite for the mitzvahs being able to grab hold of atzmus is when it's done with bittul. Va'bittul shabasiyas ha-mitzvah, the bittul of doing the mitzvahs, hu kishaha'ava ha-maviyah likiyim ha-mitzvahs, he ava atzmis shalamayla mitamadas. That is when the love that brought you to the performance of the mitzvahs is a essence love, which is higher than tam vadas, rusa de liba. It's your etzem hanefesh as a ben, as we said before, which is connected to the atzmusah. And the Rebbe elaborates. Depends how we come to the rotzen halev. If we came to it intellectually, then there is a limit. Then we are doing the mitzvahs to bring down godliness. When we bring down the level of Ava Atzmis, then we do mitzvahs because that's the Ratzon Hashem. Let's look inside. When the love, which is during the davening, is based on reason and understanding and knowledge, so then the observance of mitzvahs all day, that is in order. Why are we doing the mitzvahs? To bring down godliness, the revelation of godliness, because his motivation is a rational motivation. It brings down a revelation of godliness. And then Rebbe adds, and that would be true even when the meditation is not rational, but it's higher than the rationale. Begam ksha'ava hi al yidei ha'hizboinenus beha'haflo. So even when you meditated, not in revelation of godliness, but you meditated and you created that love in your heart by reflecting and meditating on how the Ein Sof is removed. So that's not a gilui, but you're reflecting on how high and removed godliness is. And that reflection, that type of meditation brings you to this great love, which is called the Mili Bashomayim, that he wants nothing in the heavens, so even at that that he doesn't want all revelations that come from the Ein Sof. But Agba Asmus, he just wants Asmus itself. So even in that high level, Yesh Mevukesh Bikima Mitzvahs Shaloi there is something that he wants. There is something that he is asking when he does the mitzvahs all day. which is the Hamshach Gilu Atzmus Ein Sof. He wants to bring down. He wants to bring down the revelation of Atzmus Ein Sof. If the meditation is in a rational way, then he brings down Gilu Elikus. This case, he brings down the Hafloah, so he brings down the revelation of Atzmus Ein Sof, but it's all, he wants that. He wants Atzmus. But that is the Reusa de Liba. But that follows the Reusa de Liba, the Maisim, but Vikim HaMitzvahs Shala Achri, his Eirus Havai Atzma, the Reusa de Liba. But when you do the mitzvahs after you were awakened that essence love, the Reusa de Liba, if that is the leads to the mitzvahs Hubelishu Mavukash, then there is nothing that you need. You're not asking for anything. You're not seeking anything. You don't even, the want that you want to bring down the revelation, that also you don't want. All what you want is to fulfill Hashem's blessed will in the way of Kabbalah. The habitul became a mitzvah ba'ifin zeh, who oid yoser ma'habitul shebereusa delibo. The subjugation, when you do the mitzvahs in such a way that you're just doing it to do the will of Hashem, is greater than the bittul of the rotzin halev, your heart wants. And when you do the mitzvahs, perform the mitzvahs in such a way, after the Reusa de Libo, you bring down Atzmus. So basically, the action of doing the mitzvah, doing what Hashem wants, not seeking Giluyim, not even Atzmus. You don't want anything. You only want to do what Hashem wants. That's even a greater keli to receive Atzmus even more when you have the Uso de Liba higher with your Etzem HaNefesh even higher. Why? And the Rebbe explains that. Vayishlach. So what's the reason that even through the Rotzen Halev you cannot really take hold in Asmus itself? And you need the Tshuva Maisim Tovim, but not the Usa de Liba, that Rotzen Halev, that Etzem HaNefesh. Why can't you take hold of Atzmus Mamish? Ubichdei Litves Ba'atzmus. And in order to actually take hold in Atzmus, Udavke, Aydekim HaMitzvah Shela Achara Rusa de Liba. That's only through doing mitzvahs that follows the Rusa de Liba, but not in the Rusa Liba itself. Who? The Kivon Shah Atzmus who moved on Mikol Inyan. Since Atzmus is separate, distinct from every matter, so it is impossible to grab hold in Atzmos through anything, because there is no thing that connects to him. He is distinct from anything. So how are you going to get hold if there is nothing there? Everything is not in the level of Atzmos. The only way to take but only Atzmos wants, that's the way to take him. If Atzmos wants the mitzvahs, that's how you connect. So Bekivon Shegam Ha'ava Atzmos Shemitzad Etzem HaNeshama Reusa de Liba. Since even this Ava Atzmos that comes from the essence of the soul, that is the Reusa de Liba. He Ava V'rotzen da Adam. It's a love and a desire of the person. Atzmus cannot get hold of this, because that is still a matter. It's something else. And Asmus is distinct from anything. You can't take him through anything. But only through doing his will. And this is the advantage to do the mitzvah, accepting the yoke, doing the mitzvahs practically, even more than that yearning with your essence to Hashem. The desire of the heart, that's the person's desire. Even in a case when his own rotzin is mevatel, and he's subjugated, that he doesn't want it for himself. If his desire is the Eibishter's will should be fulfilled, not mine, it's not his wishes, it's the Eibishter's wishes. Even at that level, that's a desire of the person. The person wants it, so it's still a mitzias. But doing the mitzvah with Kabbalah's oil is a higher level than that, because doing the mitzvah, it's without a rotzah, that's accepting the yoke. The kivon, shegama atzmus, va'ava atzmus, shemitzad etzem, haneshomer usod libe ya'ava v'rotzen da'adam. It's the love and the desire of the person. Einitzos b'zah atzmus mamish. So actual atzmus cannot be taken in, cannot be taken hold in the level of that level of love and rotzen alav. B'zehu ha'yisur b'shaveda kabbalah sil legab berusa deliba. The rusa deliba hu rotzen ha'adam. So to define it, rotzen alav, it doesn't matter, even if it's the highest level of rotzen alav, but anything which is rotzen of love, hu rotzen ha'adam, that's the human person's rotzen. V'gam ksharotzen shaloi hu bebitl, even when his will is bebitl she'ein it's latzma klal, he doesn't really want it for himself. All what he wants is that Hashem's will should be fulfilled. Is repeated again. But doing avodah, to accept the yoke, that you accept to do the command of Hashem, even when the command goes against your own will, similar to a slave. He doesn't want to work, but the slave has to fulfill the wishes of the master. So that is huloi mitzada mitzias ratzon shaloi. Then when you're doing it, that's not because of your being. It's not you're wanting. But that's the yoke of heaven that is placed upon you. So that is Kabbalah soil. That's not yet doing it, but the avodah of accepting the yoke is higher than the Rusa Deliba. But still, even with accepting the yoke, you don't get atzmus. Atzmus you get through the action itself. Sha'afa Pikein, Gam Habitl, the Kabbalah soil, Einei Teufes Ba'atzmus Mamish, that also doesn't take hold of Atzmus Mamish. Ubichdei Litfes Ba'atzmus, Hudavke Alidei Kima Torah Mitzvahs, you needed to do the Torah Mitzvahs. So you have Rusad Liba, no, Kabbalah soil, no, but the practical mitzvahs, yes, that is the way to take hold of Atzmus. Why is that? Why is the Kabbalah oil sufficient? But that's not his rotzen, his mevatel, his rotzen. But the kivon shekol ha'inyonim heim be'ein aroich loy choshev l'gabe yizborech. Since all matters are not comparison and considered like nothing relative to Hashem blessed. So it doesn't fit that there should be anything, any matter that you should be able to take hold in Hashem Yisbarach, even through Kabbalah soil. That would be through Kabbalah soil, you are able to grab hold. Can't be such a thing. In order to take hold of Atzmus, that's Dafka, if the Atzmus wants it, that's the way to take hold of Atzmus, not that you're nothing to do with the Metzias of the person. So why is when we do Torah mitzvahs, we take hold of Atzmus, because when you do mitzvah, that's the atzmus rotzen is the mitzvahs that you're doing. I know the zeshal yidei Torah mitzvahs toivsim ba'atzmus. The fact that through Torah mitzvahs we take hold of atzmus, huloi mitzad milas Torah mitzvahs atzmum. It's not because Torah mitzvahs have an advantage that they're connected to Elo shehu rotzen al v'fishu rotzen atzmus. That's Ratzon Atzmus. So it's not your Ratzon, it's the Ratzon. That's why you do the mitzvahs, you connect, you grab hold of Atzmus, because this is what Hashem wants. Why is it important then to have the Kabbalah soil, to have the level of tshuva, level of nitvasu in Rusa de Liba. So why do we need a Rusa de Liba? Why do we need a Kabbalah soil? Let's just do the mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs is the Ratzon Hashem. The Rebbe explains. The fact that ki mitzvah needs to be bebittel, and that is through the level of Rusa de Liba, as we said before. The Rusa de Liba brings the level of bitl, the true bitl. So why does it need to be bitl? Why can't we just do the mitzvahs, the Ratzon Hashem? Relative to Atzma, it doesn't make a difference if you're bitl or a mitzvah. So why do you need to be bitl? So that when we draw down the atzmus through the observance of the mitzvah, that it should be revealed. The only way to have the atzmus revealed is if you're bittul. If you're doing the mitzvahs through being a yesh and you're doing the mitzvahs, then you cannot see atzmus there. The kshasiyas ha-mitzvahs when the mitzvah the person does is in such a way that you sense his entity, his being, that he's the one that fulfills the mitzvah. This feeling yourself is sort of conflicts with the revelation of Asma, doesn't allow for Atzmus to reveal. So there needs to be the level of bittul. How could you have the level of bittul? Any way you do it, if you do it because of Ratzin, it's still your mitzias. It needs Rusa Liba. Even if he does it because he wants to fulfill his Ratzin. Even what he really wants is not his own, selfish for himself, but he wants to fulfill what the Eibishter wants. So you'd still feel the essence. It's still the person, as the Rebbe explained before. In order for Amshachas Atzmus that comes through the performance of mitzvahs, it should be open, it should be revealed, because his mitzvahs conflicts to the Gilu Atzmas. Who al yidei shekim ha-mitzvahs u'b'derech kabbalas oil. So that is that the mitzvahs needs to be, that's the second kabbalas oil. Loi mitzad ha-rotzen sheloi. Not his will. El mitzad el malchus shemayim amut lolov. That is the yoke of the heavenly kingdom that is placed upon him. So the person needs the usa de liba to create the level of bittel. It shouldn't be a mitzias. And if you're going to do the mitzvah because this is what you sense, it's going to always have your mitzias. It's your rotzen. You need to do Kabbalah soil. Kabbalah soil is the Eibishter's rotzen. And then through the mitzvah, you're mamshich atzmus, so that the mitzvah can be mamshich atzmus mamish. So you need all these madregas. Reusa de liba brings bittel, but we can't have it rotzen. For that, we need Kabbalah soil. And then the mitzvah becomes the keli, because there's no keli for Gilu Atzmus, only the Ratzon Atzmus himself, which is in the mitzvah. And when you do the mitzvah, that's the way you connect with Atzmus, because of Atzmus wants that, not because the person connects with that. I say, so the Rebbe explained previously that Atzmus can only be taken by the actual Maisa HaMitzvahs. Now, we also need the introduction of Reusa de Liba, which brings you to Kabbalah soil, which means you have to have the level of total bittul of Ratzon, Reusa de Liba, in which you can leis machshava tvisa bei avol nitvesu bereusa de liba. That level of bittul, which is not your mitzias, that brings you to the level of Kabbalah soil, we need that before we can do the mitzvah, in order for the person to be a keli and not contradict the atzmus that's coming into the person through the observance of the mitzvah. So you need the Reusa de Liba, which brings the Kabbalah's oil in order to be begilui. But the bottom line is, Atzmus is only taken through the actual performance of the mitzvah. But we need to do it. Hagdama to that needs to be the Reusa de Liba, which brings you to Kabbalah soil. And Kabbalah soil is higher than the Reusa de Liba, because Reusa de Liba is Aratzin, is Mitzias. That's the person's Reusa de Liba. Kabbalah's oil is accepting, but accepting the yoke, which means it's not you, it's not your mitzias. You're listening. You're like an eved who does whether you like it or not. That's the level of Kabbalah soil. But still, just Kabbalah soil is also, you need to do the mitzvah itself, because you can't, there's no means of taking atzmus through anything else, because there's no chashivas to anything else. But yet we need that bittul in order for the Reusa de Liba, in order for the Kima mitzvahs to be effective. The Rebbe will explain this a little bit more as we will go on. We'll sum this up a little bit later on. But first now, in Eiz Vav, the Rebbe discusses the two levels of a ben and an eved, which is the basically whether you do it with understanding, whether you're it's your chokhmah, your mitzias. That's the level of ben. But as the Rebbe will explain, since the ben is mushrish in the av, that becomes the av, and then we have the level of kabbalah. So let's look inside. Behine yodua. The Rebbe says it is known, and this is from Hamshach Tofresh Samach Vov, in which there is the discussion of the chilik, the shnei ha'inyonim, the ben ve'evid. We say there's two ideas. We are considered to be a son of Hashem, and we are considered to be a slave of Hashem. The expression of ben comes when we learn Torah. The expression of Eved comes when we do mitzvahs. So over there it's explained these two aspects of ben ve'eved hem b'derech klal b'limud haTorah b'kiyum hamitzvahs. Generally, it's by study of Torah and observance of mitzvahs. A ben is limud haTorah and an eved is kiyum hamitzvahs. And the Rebbe explains why is limud haTorah ben, because you have to do it with your intellect. The mitzvahs are done in a way of bitl kabbalah soil. Perhaps we can say an explanation in this. The hachiluk bein ben le'eved hu. What's the difference between a son and a servant and a slave? Hu the ha'eved hu batul leha'odin. An eved is subjugated to the master. The master dominates the eved, and the eved is subjugated to the master. Be'inyan benhu, but a son who shemitzi usay hu ha'ab is an entity. But what entity is he? He is the entity of the Father, which means his existence is the Father because he's a son of his Father. As explained in Hemshech Tofrei Samach Vav, the Masha hu rotzin ha'av hu gam rotzin haben. That which the father wants is also what the son wants. It's not being forced to accept, to subjugate to the father, but rather this becomes his desire. The desire of the father is the desire of the son. And the same thing is in intellect. Just as the father's intellect decides what needs to be done, the son's intellect concludes the same way as the father's, because it's an entity which is connected to the father. So the Eved is subjugated to the master, a Yid subjugated to Hashem. The Ben is that this Ben has the same desire and intellect of the father. So Binyonim Elu, these aspects of the entity of the father, the same mitzias or subjugation, Ben ve'Eved, Shebekol echad mi Yisrael, which is by every Yid, Mizgalin al Yidei limud haTorah v'kiyum hamitzvos. They are revealed, the person, revelation, the level of Ben and level of Eved. Level of Ben is when you learn Torah, comes that level, and the level of Eved is when you do mitzvahs. The b'kiyum hamitzvos, when you observe mitzvahs, shekiyum hamitzvos hu L'kayim tzivui Hashem b'derech kabbalah. The observance of the mitzvahs is to fulfill the Eibishter's command in a way of accepting the yoke. So when you do that, Mizgale ha'eved shaboy, then the slave in the person is revealed, doing what the Eibishter wants. That's when you do mitzvahs with acceptance, that brings about and reveals that I'm subjugated to Hashem. Ubelimud Torah, but on the other hand, when we learn Torah, that needs to be with understanding. You have to grasp specifically. Shahaseichel shel ha'odom ha'oisek ba'Torah yeh behesem l'chochmoso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that the intellect of the person he's studying, who's occupied in Torah, that his understanding should be fitting the wisdom of the Eibishter. He is learning and comprehending and grasping to fit and understand as the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mizgal haben shaloi. Then you see that he is the son, that in him you fit and you appreciate the Torah, because that is the seichel of the person himself, is a son, and his seichel, it fits with the seichel of the Av. And so the two aspects, when you're doing mitzvahs with Kabbalah soil, that reveals your Eved. And when your mind grasps Torah and it fits in with the wisdom of Hashem, that's the Ben Shaboy. And the Rebbe says this is also why the expression in the Gemara, when it comes also to the ruling, it says Bonai, because it's the Ben. The Rebbe explains that. Vayishlach, we can add the Gam Ze Shapsak Din the Ha'odom Ha'isek Batoira Tzorich Liyes Kifi Havanosid Ha'odom, that the halacha is, we know that when you rule, when a person, the Rav, when he rules and he learns Torah, he needs to go by his understanding. It has to be according to understanding. As we say, the Torah loy bashamayim. The Torah is not in the heaven. So the ruling, when the person rules according to his understanding, that is the fact that he is a ben, and in his understanding is the essence of understanding of the Eibishter. The Torah, Mamer Margela. So first of all, what is the saying of our sages when it says that the halacha is like we paskin over here? It says, the Gemara says that Kuchabrichu kochayich v'omar. Hashem is smiling, is laughing. Hashem is saying, Natschuni bonai natschuni. Specifically, the language is, my children were victorious. Not that they were victorious. So the meaning is, in order to be natschuni, has to be the idea of bonai. The hatam al ze shenatzchuni, the reason why they are victorious, that the ruling is like the Yidden, because they're a ben who lefishem bonai. What does this mean? What does it mean? Because the level of Torah, the way it comes down to a Yid who is a ben, is deeper than the level of Torah, which comes down the level of Kuchabrichu, which could differ, but the Natzchuni, the ruling is like Bonai because they have their root in Atzmus. Bahainu, and that is Kishoirish Haben Hu Ba'atzmus Ha'av. Kishoirish Haben Hu Ba'atzmus Ha'av Shalamayla Mekoiches Hagiluyim Shaloi. The root of the son is in the essence of the father, which is higher than the father's shalamayla mekoiches hagluim shaloi, which is higher than the father's revealed koiches. A son is embedded and has a root in the essence of the father, which is higher than the giluyim of the father. So Valderech Zebi Yisrael, so the similar is saying the way is by Yidden. Bonov Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which are sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sheshorsham Hu Ba'atzmus Yisborech, their root is in his blessed Atzmus, L'maylo Mikemoi Shetzimtzem Es Atzma B'Torah Kutchabrichu, which is higher than he restricted himself in the Kutchabrichu. So therefore, Kutchabrichu in the koiches, in the geluyim, the revealed part, the way the Eibishter is mitzamsim in Kutchabrichu, that comes to one conclusion. But the Yid, who is in the essence, belochein hem yodim umasigim, but the Yid therefore knows and grasps amitis haTorah, the truth of Torah, k'moi shereshes ba'atzmus, as it's rooted in the atzmus shelamaylo medargas haTorah k'meshenim shecham b'yidiyas kutchabrichu, which is a higher level than the step of Torah, as it's been extended to the yediyah, the knowledge of kutchabrichu, and that's why kutchabrichu comes up with one conclusion. Then natzchuni bonai natzchuni, being that the bonai, that they are bonai, and a ben is connected in the atzmus of, so they have a deeper understanding. So when we learn Torah, the depth of Ben comes through both in the study of Torah, you fit it with the Ratzon Hashem, and the Psak Din of Torah comes also because you are rooted in the higher level. So this is all to do with Torah. But by mitzvahs, over there is the subjugation, the level of Evet. So this Ben ve'eved is the two levels. We're talking about mitzvahs, and we're talking about limud HaTorah. But the Rebbe is going to add now, within mitzvahs, we said before, you have the bittul being an eved, and the actual doing of the mitzvah. So while we have ben Torah, eved mitzvah, but the mitzvahs we're saying it's Kabbalah soil, it's a yoke, but that's still, there's the level of the actual performance of the mitzvah, which even the level of eved doesn't, that's a Kabbalah soil. You accept it, you like an eved, you subjugate yourself. But that still doesn't get atzmus to his actually the performance as the Rebbe would of the mitzvah. B'hinei nois of the shnei hoinyonim, the ben ve'eved, on top of, in addition to these two ideas of a son and a slave, yesh oid inyan ba'avodas ha'odom. So there is a additional concept in service of the man, is the actual kiyum hamitzvahs. Is the doing of the mitzvahs. There's the bittel, the Kabbalah soil, the Evet, but then he's actually doing the mitzvah. Ukmoishen is Bayer Le'il. Siv Daled, as explained earlier in Siv Daled, and this is going to be basically a summation of the Siv Daled, that over there it says that the Bekiyum HaMitzvahs Shnei Yoni. When doing mitzvahs, there's two aspects. Habitl de Kabbalas oil Shabikiyum HaMitzvah, the subjugation of accepting the yoke, which is the way of fulfilling the mitzvah with Kabbalah soil, and Bikiyum HaMitzvah Atzma, and the doing of the mitzvah itself, the performance of the mitzvah. Ve'ikir ha'inyan de hamshochas ha'atzmus ha'idei kiyum ha'mitzvah atzma. And the main idea of bringing down atzmus to the person is through the actual performance of the mitzvah itself. Not through the Kabbalah soil, but through the actual doing. Because that's Rotzin Atzmus, that's the will of Atzmus, is the mitzvah. As we said before, so if doing the mitzvah, so why do we need Kabbalah soil? Let's just do the mitzvahs and finished. But in order for the atzmus that is drawn down through the mitzvah, it should be open. If there's no bittul and you're just doing the mitzvah, it's sort of a conflict, as he said before. And we need it to come out openly. Shetiya begilui ukshakiyum mitzvah hibederach kabbalah soil eved. It's when you do the mitzvah with kabbalah soil eved. So you have the eved and you have the mitzvah. So you need to be an eved in order for the mitzvah that you do will bring down atzmus openly, versus if you're not butl, then it's not revealed through the mitzvah, the hamshochas atzmus. And how do we have this level of Kabbalah's oil? For that, you need the Ru'usa de Liba. As we say, that's the Ru'usa de Liba brings Kabbalah's oil, which allows for the Atzmos to be revealed, begilui, when you do the mitzvah. Bashleimus the inyan zeh, sekiyum ha-mitzvahs hu beli shum vokash, verak lekayim ritzoni yisbaruch v'derech Kabbalah's oil. How do we have this idea that you're not doing it at all for yourself, and you're just doing it to fulfill Hashem's blessed will in the way of accepting the yoke? That needs to have first the arousal of the essence of Ru'usa de Liba. You need the Ben. So you need first the level of Ben, to have the Abba Atzmis, which brings the Eved, which brings the level of Kabbalah soil, which brings that the mitzvah should be Gilui, feel the Hamshachas Ha'atzmos, which comes through the actual mitzvah. So these are the three inyanim of Chochmah, Tshuva, Maisim Tovim, as the Margela bepumein the Rabbi, Tachlis Chochmah, Tshuva, Maisim Tovim, and Chochmah is Torah. So this is Gimel Inyonim Helu, and Gimel Inyonim the Chochmah, Tshuva, Maisim Tovim. Chochmah, that's Torah. Hu Inyan Ben, Kinal Sif Hey. That's the level of Ben, because we said before that through Torah we get the level of Ben. The Psak Din is Ben, Torah is Ben, a son. Tshuva, the level is Shinyonahu, Sha'odom Yetzu Mizbatel Mimtziusei. Tshuva, which the idea of tshuva is that you go out and you negate your existence. Asura Mikan, as he said before, Siv Beis, the level of tshuva to remove yourself, to leave your mitzias. uh, who al derech in the Kabbalah Soil. That's the idea of Kabbalah Soil of Evet. Umaisim tovim heim mitzvahs atzman rotzen atzmos. Umaisim tovim are the rotzen atzmos. That's the maisim tovim. Chokma ben tshuva evet. And maisim tovim is rotzen atzmos. The Rebbe says also, Vayishlach kasher zeh in pirush hayedua baloshen tshuva maisim tovim. The known interpretation when we say tshuva maisim tovim, that we say that first it says tshuva, and then it says maisim tovim. It would seem like first you do maisim tovim. If you fail, you do tshuva. Why do we say tshuva maisim tovim, not maisim tovim with tshuva? So the explanation, the known explanation, sha'idei hatshuva nasim hamaisim, that through tshuva actually did impacts the maisim become tovim. Nasim hamaisim, maisa mitzvahs, maisim tovim umeirim. They become good and shining maisim. So that is associated with what we're saying over here, because the maisim is to bring down atzmus. That's the amshochas ha'atzmus. He beikar bekim hamitzvahs maisim. That's mainly in the observance of mitzvahs. That's what we're saying. Maisim tovim. The loy behabitl the tshuva of the Kabbalah Soil, but not in the subjugation. The tshuva and Kabbalah Soil can't yet, tfisa does not yet take hold in the uh in Atzmos. El shebichdei shamaisim yiu tovim umeirim. But how do we have the maisim becoming tovim umeirim? That they should be good and shining, so the atzmos that comes in the mitzvah should be good and shining, should be begilui. Sham shochas atzmos shabem tiya begilui, that the atzmos that comes down to them should be open. Huaidei habitl, the tshuva of Kabbalah Soil. So that comes through the level of bitl that comes through the tshuva and Kabbalah Soil. That's why the tshuva, the Kabbalah Soil, the lack of your mitzias of tshuva allows for the amshochas atzmus that comes through the maisim to become tovim umeirim. Oh, so now we're talking about that the learning of Torah is the mitzias. It's the mitzias of the Av, but that becomes his mitzias. But we need, the Rebbe explains now that that too should be in the level of bittul. When you learn Torah with your mitzias, you have to bring it also that in it should be sensed the level of bittul, like learning in a way of accepting the yoke of Torah to learn more beyond the mitzias. Look inside Zion. Hine hagam she'inyan esek haTorah hu shemitzius shel ha'odom. Even though that the idea of occupying a Torah is that the mitzias, the entity, the person, havon of asoga shaloi, tia bahasam la Torah, we want his understanding should be fitting the Torah. So it's his understanding, but his understanding fits the Torah. But it's all about understanding. Also, in the study of Torah, we need also to have that that subjugation of an Eved. So even though we said before the difference between Ben and an Eved, the Ben is Torah, in Torah is Nizgala, the Metzias, but we also need in that Metzias also to have the Oilashel, the Ulashel Torah, the yoke of Torah, meaning it being a level as a yoke. This is what our sages tell us. It's not the same one who reviews the chapter that he learns 100 times, to one who learns the chapter 101 time. Because this extra time that he learns, he changes his nature and what he's accustomed to. Doing one more, you're breaking yourself. So that's the level of Ula Shel Torah. And that's the level of Bittel. Shagam b'Torah tzorich liyas habittel the Evet. That also in Torah needs to be the Bittel of Evet. That we need to have in the way of Oila. So how does this fit in? Before we were talking about that Ben is Mitzias, is his Avona Vasoge, should fit in the kavona of Asmus, Shadish and Asmus. And here now we're saying that he has to have subjugation. The Rebbe will explain now that when you come to the level of the higher level, over there really a Ben and an Eved are one and the same. You can have them together. The Metzias with the bit. Let's look inside. The point of the explanation is the Ben ve'Eved hem shnei inyonim. The fact that the Ben, the Avoida, you're a Ben, and you're Avoida, you're an Eved, son of Hashem and a servant of Hashem. These are two separate matters. Hem shnei inyonim. Hu b'haneshama k'moi shabo b'hamshocha. The soul, as it has come down, that it extends into the goof, into the person. So over there, the neshama can serve Hashem as a ben and an evet. Avol b'sheidish haneshama, k'moishi mushareshes b'ha'atzmus mamish. That's the neshama, as the neshama has come down into but the neshama from where its source is, the way it is in its source by atzmus, shneim heim inyan echad. The ben and the eved over there, there's not two separate levels in the source of the neshama which comes from atzmus. V'lochein gam belimud ha'toyra tzorich liyis Gam habitel David. That's why also in the study of Torah there needs to be that subjugation of Eved, not enough to be just a ben. Dal yidei limud haTorah b'bchinas ben bilvad. When you learn Torah just in the level of a son, hahiskashrus the Yisrael be'oraisa, then the connection of the Yid to Torah that he's learning, he ba'adarga de Torah k'moishe bo b'hamshocha. That's already the level of Torah as it extended. Torah v'hamitzvahs nasu shnei inyonim. So you have Torah and you have mitzvahs. You do it. That's in the level of Ben, level of Eved is in Torah as it's come out, and there is a separation of Torah mitzvahs. But ubichdei shetiyeh hayiskashrus be'etzem haTorah, k'moishe mushreshes ba'atzmus. But in order to connect with the essence of Torah, as Torah is rooted in atzmus, sheshom haTorah ba'mitzvahs imchad. In where Torah mitzvahs are one, there is no separation of Torah mitzvahs in Atzmus, who al yidei shebelimud haTorah sheloi mudgoshim shnei inyonim. That comes that when he learns Torah over here, you emphasize these both aspects within Torah, and you come to the higher level. That first of all, the Torah loy bashamayim hi elonitno l'rishusay. The Torah is not in the heaven, but is given to his rishus, which means his metzius. Shlochein piskei dinim shaloi hem kifi havanosi davki. That's why the ruling is according to his understanding. Ve'ein mashgichim bebaskel, and we don't pay attention to a voice that comes from the heavens to decide the rulings. Metzius the ben. That's why. That's on one hand, you have the metzius the ben. Ubiyachad im zeh, and together with that level of mitzias from Ben, that it is up to him and his understanding and his mitzias, who mekabel of oil Torah, he still accepts the yoke of Torah. Shahat Torah, he ha'odin shaloi, that the Torah is his master. Who bottle lahat Torah. And he is subjugated to Torah like a servant who has to do the yoke, who's the yoke of the master is upon him. That represents when the person combines mitzias and bittul in his learning of Torah, that he has his mitzias habon v'asoga, and yet he accepts himself the yoke of Torah, that the Torah is his master. That represents that you connect to the level of Torah the way it's in Atzmus, which is higher than the separation of Torah and mitzvahs. So you're not only getting the level of Torah where Torah is different than mitzvahs, but the level of Torah where Torah is one with mitzvahs. And that comes through the combined Ben and Eved within the level of Torah. So you need that second level, also the level of Oila Shel Torah. So now we're going to understand, the Rebbe asked before, Torah is Avona v'Hasoga. So why are we saying that Tachlis, that the way Rashi's Pshat, that the Friedrich Rebbe brought down on the Margela Pum the Rabbe, that the Tachlis of Chochmah is Tshuva Maisim Tovim, that actually the Chochmah itself needs to be bittul. So Tachlis Chochmah Tshuva Maisim Tovim, the Ikra Shel Torah Hu Sheyehei Imo Tshuva Maisim Tovim. That the main of Torah is that Torah has to have with it, the Torah itself, not the lead only, but Torah needs to have Tshuva Maisim Tovim, the level of bittul within Torah. The noise of Lozeh, Sha'Torah Meviyah l'Tshuva Maisim Tovim, in addition to the fact that Torah brings to Tshuva Maisim Tovim, HaTshuva u'Maisim Tovim tzrichim liyes ima. They need to be with it, with not to lead to it, but Tshuva Maisim Tovim need to be part of Torah, ima Torah atzma, with Torah itself. Shebelimud HaTorah yeh gam habitl Tshuva Maisim Tovim. So that in the study of Torah should be also that subjugation of Tshuva Maisim Tovim in the Torah that is learning. Yesh loymar dezeh she'omer, and the Rebbe explains now, the fact that she'yehei imo Tshuva Maisim Tovim, so, which means with it should be Tshuva Maisim Tovim, meaning not that it comes from the person, the bittul that comes from the person is still his mitzvahs. Let's see, the Rebbe explains now. The Zeshe Yomer Sheyehei Imo Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim. Rashi says that Tachlis Chochma Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim, that with it should be Ma'asim Tovim. Who? Ki habitul the Tshuva, the subjugation of Tshuva, Masha Odom Yotzem Mitziusei, the fact that the person goes out from his self, from his being. Asura Mekan, who mitzad haherge shaloi, that his feeling is level of bittul v'lochein. So even though this is bittul, gam b'habittul mu'urav b'dakas hametzias shaloi. So even in that subjugation, in a very refined way, there's still mixed in his metzias. Va'amitis habittul hu habittul demaisim tovim. But the Rebbe is explaining why we need both tshuva and maisim tovim. Because if it's just teshuva, it's still your self, because that bittul is based on self. The zeh shekima mitzvahs u'b'derech kabbalas oil, but when we're doing the mitzvahs in a way of accepting the yoke, loy mitzad rotzin shaloi, that's not his rotzin, elo mitzad oil malchus shamayim hamutal alav, but that's being the yoke of the heavenly kingdom that is placed on you. You accept the Eibishter as your king, and you do it even if it's against you. It can also receive dalit. So the Rebbe is trying to explain that with Torah you need bittul, but you also need, which is tshuva, but you also need ma'asim tovim, because the Rebbe explained before the ma'asim tovim is the level of kabbalas oil that brings to the ma'asim tovim, and the level of kabbalas oil comes from the Eibishter. You're doing it because you're an Eved, as opposed to tshuva, which is it's a little bit of your feeling. That's when we explain ma'asim tovim, even the kabbalas oil to do the ma'asim tovim, ubefrat la'abir del il sivov, especially according to the explanation that we said before, Sivov Shakavone b'maisim tovim, hila mitzvahs maisim atzmom, not the kabbalas oil only, but the actual mitzvah is himself. The lefi bittul biurze, according to that explanation, habittul the maisim tovim hu, then the bittul that is maisim tovim, hu she'ene nirgash boy gam zeh shubot lot, you don't even feel that he is subjugated to the master. He's not even like an Eved. You're not even like bottle, just the rotzen. You just feel the rotzen of Hashem. Or what you feel is the desire, is the rotzen of above. So that's the deeper level in Maisim Tovim, not even Kabbalah soil, but just doing. And in the doing, there's no feeling at all. There's no feeling, it's just the action. So therefore, the explanation is that the tachlis chochma, we need both. You need tshuva ma'asim tovim. Tachlis chochma, hu she'yehei imo tshuva ma'asim tovim. That with the learning together needs to be both tshuva ma'asim tovim. Shebelimud ha-Torah shaloi, that in his study of Torah, yi habitl the tshuva, you should have the bittul of tshuva. The gam habittul the ma'asim tovim, also bittul ma'asim tovim. The Rebbe explains that you need both, as he explained before, that ultimately chokhmah itself is not sufficient. You need to have the level of bittul. Now, both tshuva and ma'asim tovim, as the Rebbe explains, even tshuva is a level of bittul, but it still has the hergish metzias bedakas of the person, asura mikan. And then you have ma'asim tovim. Ma'asim tovim, we also have the kabbalas oil of ma'asim tovim, which still there is a hergish that you have to do it, or then you have the other, even Maisim Teva means just the act of mitzvah. There's no hergish there. That's the additional level of bittul. That needs to be part of chokhmah. Be'inyan zeh hu ikra shel Torah. So this aspect is the main of Torah. Kal yidei zeh toifsim be'ikr v'shoresh haTorah. Because through this, through learning Torah in this way, as I said before, when you learn it with both mitzias and not mitzias, you tap into the atzmos of Torah, the ikir of Torah, and where there is no difference between Torah and mitzvahs. That's the way you grab hold or you connect, you are toifus in the main and the root of Torah as it's rooted in atzmos. That's why we call it here ikra shel Torah. The Rebbe is going to explain now another aspect in it that Vayishlach. The Rebbe explains it. Why is it Rava? Why is Margela bepumein the Rava? The Rebbe brings down that the Rava's learning was in a greater way of than Abaye. Abaye is called the bones of eating bones, and the Rava's Torah is called eating the meat. So that's why it's more important, because when you are learning and in a way that you get the meat of Torah, so there's more potential for being the Metzias of Adam, and he has to caution, therefore, that it should be in a way of Tachlis Chochma, that you should learn it with the level of Bittel. Vi'yishlach, we can add, the Hatam al Zeh, Shemaimer Zeh, Tachlis Chochma, Tshuva Maisim Tovim, we can explain why is this statement of Chochma Tshuva Tevim specifically in Rava's mouth. Why is it Rava Daf? Ki belimud haTorah shnei efanim v'chlolus. Because in study of Torah you have two styles. You have Abaye and Rava. Oifen halimud Abaye, oifen halimud Rava. That is the way that Abaye learned and the way Rava learned. As the Rebbe brings down now, he would eat it, the bones, like in plain, and Rava would in a wide way. So everything of all learning is sort of divided up in Habaya the Rava, because we say Sholochein b'Habaya the Abaya v'Rava nichlolin kol inyonim sh'tutir shabal peh. It's called in all of the discussions of Abaya and Rava, all the oral Torah is included in it, and it's all part. We call it all Habayis, Abaye, Verova, because these are the two styles of learning. What is the two styles? The two styles is Vachiluk sheben shnei efanim hu. What is the difference between the two styles? As the Gemara says, Adim garmitu garmi be Abaye. Instead of collecting the bones in the house, in the yeshiva of Abaye, to achli bisra shmene be Rava, come and eat fat meat in the house of Rava. So, meaning he learned it in a different, in a wide way, like bisra shmene. Bekivon shalimud ha'torah de Rava hoya ba'ofen shal bisra shmene. Since it was in a way, it was fat meat, halachas shuhuvis meruvachas. What means bisra shmeina, as Rashi says there in the Gemara, that they were, the halachas were shining and they were wide. The Rava explanation. Shabalimud ba'ifun zeh mudgeshes hametzias shel adam aleimet. Learning in such a way emphasizes the metzias of the person studying. Ubefrat, especially shanagose hoisot, that the custom conduct of Rava was Shemakamed the Pasuk Lula Rabbanon, before he started the class opened up for the Rabbanim the Shir, Amar Milsa di Chusa, he said a matter of a light nature in order to get the Rabbanim to laugh, to enjoy the Therefore, Hoya Margela bepumein ha-Mamer. That's why he would, in his mouth, it was accustomed to saying of Tachlis Chochma Tshuva Maisim Tovim, that the goal ultimately of Chochma is Tshuva Maisim Tovim, because he needs bittul. Shebelimud ha-Torah tzarich liyas gam ha-bittul the Tshuva Maisim Tovim. That in study of Torah, you also need to have that subjugation of Tshuva Maisim Tovim. That's why Rava particularly, who learned in a wide way and fat meat, and it was mostly sense the metzias of the person, he needed to specifically bavorn, to caution that it needs to be the tachlis chochma tshuva maisim tovim, the level of tshuva and maisim tovim need to be ima, part of that level, together with the level of mitzias, also to the level of bittul, in order to get, and that is the ikra shel Torah, to get the Torah as it's in the highest level, the level of atzmus. Oistes, v'hine yadua, it's known shekol ha'inyonim shebedrusha Rabbeinu Nisienu, all matters that are in the memorim of our Rebbes, our leaders, koilil gam zmanim mirosim, which also includes when they said it, hein betachlis hadiyuk, they are totally precise and intentional for that time. So based on this, we can say the mahataimim shadrush zeh. Some of the reasons why this Mamer Omre Chvet Kedushas Merichamu Admur, that my father-in-law, the Rebbe, said it b'Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach, on the Shabbos Parshas of Vayishlach, which is Hashabbos Shelifnei Yutas Kislev, which was the Shabbos before Yutas Kislev. So there's a special reason for that, because because this above idea is hinted in the Pasuk Pod B'Sholom Nafshi, Goymer Hashayich Yutas Kislev, which has a connection to Yutas Kislev. The Pasuk Pod B'Sholom Nafshi represents or brings out the same idea we discussed in the Margela, bepumein derav, that Tachlis Chochma Tshuva Maisim Tovim. He said it before Yutas Kislev, which is associated with the Pasuk Pod B'Sholom Nafshi, Hashayich Yutas Kislev. And also b'haposik kotonti mikola chasodim and mikola emes goymer shebeparshas Vayishlach. V'gam shayich lageula the Yutas Kislev, and also as a connection to the redemption of Yutas Kislev. So side the pasuk pod b'sholom nafshi, side the pasuk which is associated with Yutas Kislev. That's when the redemption came, when the Alter Rebbe read the pasuk, and it's also the pasuk kotonti, which is in our parsha, in Parshas Vayishlach, and also to the redemption in general Yutas Kislev. It's all associates with this Margela bepumein derav. Because I think that outside of that, we don't see a very clear connection. Okay, this is a very important statement of Rava, Margela bepumein derav, but how does this connect to this Shabbos? How does it connect to the Shabbos when the Frierdiker Rebbe said this? And the Rebbe says, yes, it's connected side to the Parsha of Vayishlach, side to the Posik in Tehillim, and side to the Gula of Yutas Kislev, which the Shabbos was before. So it was Yutas Kislev and came before Yutas Kislev. So what's the idea? The Gimel in Yonim Shebe Mamer Azal Hanal, the three aspects that are in the above saying of our sages. Chochma tshuva ma'asim tovim. Shayochim legimul ha'amudim the Torah avodah gemilus chasodim. They are connected. There is a connection to the three pillars on which the world stands. In Pirkei Avos, we have Torah, avodah, and gemilus chasodim. So chochma is Torah, and tshuva is avodah. Avodah is davening. Why is it tshuva? Ki tefillah avodah hu inyan habittul, because tefillah is the idea of bittul, the idea of subjugation, and Adam hamispalel who kavod b'fnei rabbi, because a person who davens is like a servant in front of his master. So avodah is teshuva is bittul. Umaisim tovim gemilus chasodim, maisim tovim, which is essentially mitzvahs, but gemilus chasodim is the third pillar, which is really maisim tovim. The gemilus chasodim who close kol mitzvahs. The all mitzvahs are generally all mitzvahs are gemilus chasodim, and therefore this is the three levels of chokhmah, tshuva, and maisim tovim. V'hinei darshu razal, our sages expounded. Poda b'sholem nafshi, goimer. So it says in the Gemara that kol ha'osek b'Torah b'gemilas chasodim u'mispalel im hatzibur. That one who occupies himself in Torah and gemilas chasodim u'mispalel im hatzibur, which is the three kavim, ki'ilu padani li'ilu b'nei mibein ha'umis, is as if you redeemed me and my sons from the nations of the world. So here the redemption is through the three aspects: the Torah, Gemilas Chasodim, Utfila, Tfila B'tzibur. So this is the three inyonim as hinted in the pasuk Pod B'Shol. Aderech zo b'pasuk Kotointi mikol hachasodim or mikol ha'emes. I've been made small from all the chasodim. What is chasodim loshen rabim? Mikol ha'emes. The chasodim loshen rabim. Those are the two lines of Gemilas Chasodim and Tefillah. Those are the Chasodim. Ukiyadua shet Tefillah he bechlal Gemilas Chasodim. That Tefillah davening is included in Gemilas Chasodim. V'nemar hachasodim kumikol hachasodim loshen rabim ki hachesed de gemilus chasodim mitzvahs v'hachesed de tefillah haim shnei chasodim. They're separate. They're called chasodim. It's still both of them are considered to be included in gemilus chasodim, but it's two separate. Uvefrat lefi hayidua, especially as it's known shetefillah he bikav hagavura. That's in the line of Gevura, Halo Mil Matalomaylo, to elevate from below to above. The Mizeh move on. So from that we understand Shachesed B'Tfila, Einuka Chesed Shel Gemilas Chasodim. The Chesed Tefillah is not like the Chesed Gemilas Chasodim. It's two Chasodim. The Rebbe doesn't go into such a long explanation about. The Rebbe just says Yadua. So we'll take it for that the Tefillah is also Gemilas Chasodim. It's a level of Gevura, but it's a different kind of Chasodim. But it's still Chasodim, it's two. So the two levels of Kotointi V'Kol HaChasodim is the level of Gemilas Chasodim and Tefillah, and the Emes Hu Torah. And V'Kol HaChasodim V'Kol Emes is Torah, Ein Emes El Torah. So what does the pasuk says? Kotointi V'Kol HaChasodim V'Kol HaEmes. That kotointi means I become small. The inyan habitl who leirak mikol hachasodim. Not only kol hachasodim, the inyan of bitl, which is in the Maisim Tovim, the Bittel and the Maisim Tovim, Hakabin the Tefillah Gemilos Chasodim, Tshuva Maisim Tovim. Not only in the two lines of Tefillah Gemilos Chasodim, which would be Tshuva Maisim Tovim, Alagam Mikola Emes, also Torah, also Emes, also is Katointi. That's the idea that needs to be the level of Bittel, even in the level of Torah. Similarly, in the saying of our sages we quoted before in Podu B'Sholom Nafshi, Shadiku kol ha'oisek b'Torah v'lo ha'lemed b'Torah. But there, the emphasis is one who occupies in Torah, not just studying Torah. The inyan oisek b'Torah. What does it mean when we say you're occupying in Torah? Commission. As my father-in-law, the Rebbe explains, that in addition to learning by himself, he puts an effort with all kinds of effort to bring many people to learning Torah. The fact that he doesn't satisfy himself by learning himself, and he brings the many to learn Torah. Especially when he devotes time that he can learn on his own, and he devotes it in order to bring other people to learning Torah. That's the bittul to Torah. So this is the idea that Tachlis Torah, the Tshuva Maisim Tovim, to have in the level of Emes also, Mekol Emes, and in the level of Oisik Batoira, the level of Bittul. Yud v'hinei nisbayir li'il sivzayin shahachibur d'shnei inyonim the ben ve'eved, the how to connect these two aspects of a son and a servant, a slave, why they gilu etzem aneshama k'beshu mushureshes ba'atzmos, is by revealing the essence of the soul as rooted in atzmus, and you can be both a ben ve'eved. Because in the essence of the soul, these two aspects are really one. So now we can explain the order of the Mamer Margela now. We start off with Kol Oisuk Bat Torah, Gemilos Chasodim Mispalim Atzibur. We start with Torah. So Magdim Torah leGemilos Chasodim Utfila, that you do Torah before Gemilos Chasodim and Tefillah. But even though Hagam Shebeseder Avodas Adam, and normally in the Avodas Adam, the way the order is, in generally speaking, is Limud HaTorah B'Ikil Acharat Tefillah. The main study of Torah is after davening. So why does he start off with Torah? Shabal Achri Kedimas Gemilos Chasodim. So Gemilos Chasodim comes before Mispalim Atzibur because Mamer Margela, as the sages tell us, you give a coin to a poor person daven. So the Gemilos Chasodim comes before davening. But why does he start off with Kol Oisuk B'Torah? Because the true idea of redeeming B'Sholem, that's through revealing the level of Yechidah. So in order to get to Gila Yechida, that comes through Torah, learning in these both areas to get to the Sheresh HaTorah. So you need that Oisek Bat Torah to bring about the Yechida. When we talk about redemption, that through this you bring about redemption to me and my son from the Umas, the Zesha Inyan Zeh Yiyabisa Mashiach Davka. Why is this going to be with the coming of Mashiach, that redemption, Mashiach, that's because Mashiach is the Yechida of Ishtalshus in general. So when we say the Kavona can be Yechida, he loy rak ledarga protis the Yechida. We're not talking about Yechida versus Chaya, the level Elagam le'etzem haneshama. We're talking about the essence of the soul, which I guess is even higher than the level of Yechida, which is a specific level, but we're talking about the essence of the soul. So Mashiach is the essence. This explains why Torah comes before Gemilas Chasodim Utfila. Ki hagilui the etzem haneshama hu alideya isek b'Torah. Because the etzem haneshama revelation comes through isek b'Torah. We said that you get to the sheidish of the neshama and the sheidish of atzma. The zeh shehaTorah ben he be'ofen the isek evet. The fact that you have both that Torah, which is ben Oisek Batoira, in a way, mitzad Eved, because like we said before, in order to get other people to learn to be Oisek, that requires the level of bittel, the Avodas Eved, is mitzad Zetzan Neshama. But Lochein Inyan Zeh, and that's why this idea of Oisek Batoira hu hachona hu ikris, the Bias HaMashiach, that is the main preparation for the coming of Mashiach, Hayichida, the Klolos, Hayishtalshlus, the Yichida of the Ishtalshlus in general. Which Mashiach is that level of Yichida, and that's brought about through the Yichida, and mainly that comes through the level of Torah, Ma'oisik B'Torah, La'oisik Shal Yidei Gila Yichida, the Klolos, Hayishtalshlus, Shehi Losid Love, through the revelation of the Yichida of the Ishtalshlus in general, which is going to be in the future. Yitoisef Ilui B'chol Gimul Ha'inyonim. That's going to add an elevation in all three areas of Chokhmah, Tshuva, Umaisim Tovim. That all of these levels will become on a much higher level, to an elevation uncomparable. The Menegea Torah, Chokhmah, Razal, Urgal to Torah, our sages tell us that it's going to be nothing in the times relative to the time of Mashiach. Torah, the Achshov, he hevel legabe Torah Mashiach. It's vanity. Today's Torah relative to the Torah of Mashiach. Benegel Tshuva, Yadua, and as far as Tshuva goes, it's going to be in a whole different level. It says Mashiach Osid la'asovet tzadikaya b'tiyufta. Even tzadikim will bring to Tshuva. Tshuva the tzadikim nailis. The Tshuva of tzadikim is on a higher level than Tshuva kipshuta. So that will be elevated with the coming of Mashiach. And as far as good deeds, mitzvahs, it's known, the observance of mitzvahs will be in total wholesomeness. The Rebbe adds, that when we say that the Maisim Tovim, that the wholesomeness, the Maisim Tovim that will become complete when Mashiach comes and they'll be shining and good, that includes also the idea that all matter, Maisim Tovim, meaning all of Asiya, the whole world of Asiya will be shining. To the extent that the night will shine like the day, the true and complete redemption, through the righteous Mashiach, in a way, the miyadhin immediately they will be redeemed.